Hello, this is Trevor Lewis from the Voyager Middle School STEAM Lab classroom, and we are going to be learning about isometric drawing today. I'm going to draw these two shapes. Normally, if I was live in class, I would be handing these out to students. You can see that they've been used by students before, and we would be drawing these as isometrics or orthographics, but I'm going to record this video. An isometric drawing is one where the measurements are the same. If you look at this front corner here, each one of these 90-degree angles is actually 120 degrees on paper. I always start with this downward facing corner here. These angles here are 60 degrees, which means these angles are 30 degrees, which can be approximated by going over 5 equal spaces and up 3 equal spaces to get a approximately 30-degree angle. If you have grid paper, that's easier, or you could also use isometric dot paper. Looks like this, where the dots are already spaced out for you, or they have isometric paper that's made out of triangles, the bunch of equilateral triangles, that also works. But I'm gonna do it like I don't have any of those resources. Like I don't have access to a printer. I can't print this stuff out, so I'm gonna try it that way. I got myself a pencil, I got myself my shapes, and then I'm using my favorite type of straight edge, which is an ID card, because it's thicker and a little more robust, and it's not so big that I keep stabbing myself in the stomach with it if it's a longer pencil. So we're gonna get started. Hopefully this video won't take forever, because isometric drawing can be kind of slow. I might speed up a few parts. I'm gonna start with this one. This one might look more complicated, but actually, because it's all right angles, it's actually going to be a little bit easier. The principles that I want to think about for isometric drawing, the way I teach it to my students is, the first thing to do is to start with the downward arrow, and if you get practice at it, you can just sketch it in real quick like that. The next thing to consider is that that if the lines are parallel lines are parallel. I know that seems a little strange, but parallel lines in reality, so like this line is parallel to this line and this line and this line and this line in reality, so then in the drawing they need to be parallel, and that's pretty easy. If you have a clear ruler, that makes it a lot easier, because you can just slide the clear ruler and you can find that parallelness. The last thing I'm going to say is I would start with the cube. I would practice the cube first. If you can do a good isometric cube, what you can do then is, if you got an isometric cube down, something like this, and I always run out of space, I always put it too close, then anything that fits inside that cube you can build up by having this sketched out cube. Once you have the cube down, you can sort of make the cube into more of like a rectangular prism, where not all the lengths are the same. And then if you have something that fits inside a rectangular prism, and everything kind of fits inside a rectangular prism, then you can model it. So, if you're trying to do a shoe and you're like, well, the tip of the shoe is halfway up this front side and it's in the middle, and it's a high top, so it goes up to here, you can start making reference points and then sketching the lines in between them, and you can make an isometric view of any object, not just rectilinear objects. All right, let's do this one. So, just so that you have a good idea of what this looks like, this little stair step, you could pick any one of these as your front corner, but some of them are going to hide some stuff in the back, so I'm going to pick the shortest one as my front corner. My isometric view is going to be right about there, okay? So I'm going to just start, and I always want to start low on my page. I want to have lots of real estate up here, and I'm going to start with that downward arrow, and I'm always going to use a pencil, and I'm just going to approximate, but you could count over 3 spaces and up 5 spaces, but I'm going to approximate a 60-degree angle, and I want that on both sides. So I want these two angles to be equal, and I'm approximating, and I don't always do a great job, and I'm not in love with this. I think this one's a little lower than this one, but I'm going to go with it for now. I went real faint because this first edge is actually pretty short, so maybe I'm going to set a length for that. I'm going to say, okay, that length here is going to be this long on the paper, and that sets an approximate scale. Okay, so then if I have that length, I got maybe 3 times that length this way, and then 3 times that length this way. I'm not using my straight edge like I should be, but I can also use my straight edge as a bit of a measurement. So I can go from there to there, and then I can even mark it on the edge with my pencil and then erase it later and draw in. Oops. So when you're using a straight edge, I put my pencil down and then I put the straight edge up to it, and then you can see that your straight edge actually isn't on the line, it's parallel to the line usually. So those are my front two edges here, and I went up there. I'm going to go half that distance back. So if I went the full distance, it would be something like that. So I want to go half that distance. So I'm going to go from here to there, half that distance back this way for this first stair step surface. Oops, I moved my straight edge. You want to hold your straight edge at least 2 points so it doesn't move on you like mine just did. Okay, so that's these two edges. This up is less than that, and I want it to be parallel to this line. So I can mark the line like that and just slide it over, and then I'm going to go short. Okay. I can mark that line and slide it over. If I had a clear ruler, this is where it would really be nice because I could see this line through the ruler and align it up on this side. But I don't, so I'm going to do this. If you're not using a straight edge and not sliding over like me, well, one, you should be. And two, there's a technique you can do, and I'm going to fade this up because I'm not sure how long it is. I'm going to keep it faint. You can do this technique where you find this by moving your hand over and over it, and then just go slash, slash, just slash that at that same angle. And you can see I kind of sketched it in there. And that's not a terrible way of making them parallel, but sliding it up like this, you can see I was pretty close to where I wanted it to be. But I'm going to darken that line up. Sometimes you can come back in with ink or a Sharpie. And so this line is going to be parallel to this line over here. And back here too. So I'm going to go back and look. Yeah, I'm going to see all three of those in their full length. And they should be this long. So I'm actually going to mark it on my straight edge here. And I'm going to slide it on back. I'm going to draw in that line, slide it on back. Yeah, make sure those are parallel. Draw on that line. This one's going to be vertical, so sometimes I got to come back and say, okay, a little bit longer there. You want this line and this line parallel. Sometimes it helps to put a longer line on there. Okay, this line parallel with this line. It's really about just making those lines parallel to each other, building it up a little bit at a time. Is that line parallel with this line? Not very much. Maybe I'm going to cheat it a little bit like that. And then change that a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go way up for this one. Well, let's do this next step. Let's do this next step first. So a little bit up, probably about the same distance, about this distance, but up here. Okay. Then this line parallel, but only when it lines up with this. So something like that. This line parallel over here. And this should be the same length as that, so maybe I'll use those marks I had from before. Okay, that's that back corner of this second to tallest step. Some of that's going to get covered up here, so I'm going to go ahead and go vertical from this corner, and this one's a little bit taller. I want to make sure I'm nice and parallel with all my verticals. And then this one's going to go right back like this, so it's that angle. I'm going to actually drop down here. I'll flip it around and use my marks to match the length. Make sure I'm parallel with that line. Okay. So now you can see I'm only going to see about this little tiny portion going back there. And then this one, I want this all to line up here, so that's gonna be a little bit tricky. I'm gonna sketch these in lightly, so I'm gonna go past where I know I need to go. That's not exactly where I want it either. Don't have a lot of eraser on this pencil. It's good to have an eraser. Something like that. That's not the straightest line I've ever done. So, you know, modifying is always good. Coming back in later, I'm going to do it this way so I can see that I'm parallel to all these verticals. And you can, this way I can also kind of see this is going to come down this way. So that line right there is going to be parallel. And then that's where that's when I can come in and darken this line up and keep it. Okay, and then this line right here is going to go back in space. Parallel. This line right here needs to be parallel over here. So you can see when I go too far like that, I can come right up to the line and then come back and darken this edge, and then maybe hit these drafting lines with an eraser a little bit. And then there's this last line here to finish up. So that's my shape. I don't actually like how tall that is comparatively. I think it didn't quite turn out. My original angle made some of these shapes a little bit fatter. I think some of these lines went a little bit crooked, but I can always criticize every orthographic drawing, every isometric drawing when I'm done with it. But you definitely get the impression of that object from the isometric. These lines are all parallel with each other, and then all the vertical lines should be parallel. If you have a lined paper, you could turn your lined paper so that it's going this way, and you could just use those lines to make those vertical lines. And then these lines are all parallel. So you have 3 different directions with something like this. I'm going to split this into 2 videos because this one's already long enough. And then I'm going to do this one, which does not have as many parallel lines, but it's actually not too hard once you understand what to do.